Imagine that in a single day, everything you know and love is torn away from you. Your health, your wealth, your family, everything. No explanations, no warnings. Only pain, loss, and despair. Job, a man of integrity and righteousness, saw his life turn into a battlefield between faith and suffering. His journey is not just about pain, but about the relentless search for answers and faith in the midst of adversity. How do you react when everything around you crumbles? The story of Job is about the courage of a man who defied suffering and stood firm. Get ready to hear the journey of faith and resilience of a man who, even in the face of the impossible, never let his faith waver. Job was a virtuous man, known in his land Uzi for his integrity and kindness. He owned vast lands, large herds of cattle and sheep, camels, oxen, and many servants. His family was numerous, with 7 sons and 3 daughters, all respectful and loving. Job was respected not only for his wealth, but also for his character. He was constantly devoted to worshiping God, offering sacrifices on behalf of his children to ensure they remained in communion with the Creator. His life seemed to be a demonstration of divine blessing. Job not only lived according to God's commandments, but was also recognized for his kindness and generosity toward others. He was a man of great wisdom, and everyone in the city sought his guidance. For Job, life was full of blessings, and he appeared to be living under divine favor. But Job's peace and prosperity would be tested in a way he could never have imagined. The story of Job does not begin on earth, but in the heavens, where God himself takes pride in his faithful servant. Have you seen my servant Job? God asked Satan. There is no one like him on earth, a man of integrity, who fears God and shuns evil. Satan, with disdain, replies, Of course Job fears God. He has an easy life, wealth, and health. If the Lord allows him to lose everything, he will surely curse you. God, in his infinite wisdom, permits Satan to test Job's faith, but with one condition. He cannot touch Job's life. Satan is then sent to earth to bring a series of tragedies upon the righteous man. Job's journey would begin with a sequence of catastrophic events beyond his imagination. In a single day, Job received a series of devastating messages, one after another. First, a messenger ran to him and said, The oxen and sheep have been stolen by invaders, and all the servants who were tending the flocks have been killed. Before he could fully grasp the gravity of the news, another messenger arrived, saying, The camels have been raided by another tribe, and the servants have been slaughtered. Then a third messenger rushed in, his eyes filled with tears, delivering the most heartbreaking news of all. The house where your children were gathered collapsed. They were all inside, and every one of them perished. Job was stunned. In a single blow, he had lost everything, his wealth, his possessions, and most painfully, his children. He was in shock, unable to process the sheer magnitude of his losses. Yet, amidst all the pain and devastation, his response was astonishing. He stood up, tore his robes, and fell to ground, but instead of cursing God, he said, Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. The sorrow was overwhelming, but his faith remained unshaken. Even in the depths of his grief, Job did not lose his connection with God. He showed remarkable resilience, resisting the urge to curse or blame him. The death of his children was an immeasurable blow, but he chose to honor the name of the Lord. Job's story was only beginning. Satan, not satisfied with Job's emotional suffering, sought permission to afflict his body. God granted permission but set one condition: Job's life must be preserved. Satan then inflicted upon Job a terrible disease, covering his entire body with painful, festering sores from head to toe. Job sat in ashes, the only place where he could find a slight relief from his suffering, and used a piece of pottery to scrape his wounds. His pain was so intense that even the smallest movement caused unbearable agony. His appearance was pitiful, his body ravaged by disease, and his soul consumed by anguish. At this moment, Job's physical suffering became as immense as his emotional torment. The loss of his possessions and children was now accompanied by excruciating pain that made him long for death. He stood on the brink of despair, feeling utterly abandoned by God. 3 of Job's friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, heard about the tragedy that had struck their friend and decided to visit him to offer comfort. When they arrived, they could barely recognize the figure before them. Job's suffering was overwhelming, and his friends remained silent for 7 days, unable to speak in the face of such immense pain. However, after this initial silence, they began to offer their own explanations for Job's suffering. Eliphaz was the first to speak, suggesting that Job must have sinned, as he believed all suffering was a form of divine punishment. He argued that if Job repented and confessed his sins, God would restore his life. Bildad also claimed that Job's children may have sinned, which led to their tragic fate. Zophar, in an even harsher tone, insisted that Job should repent quickly, for his suffering was a direct consequence of his wrongdoing. Job, however, refused to accept their perspective. He knew there was no sin in his life that could justify such suffering. He rejected his friends' accusations and began to ask himself, "Why am I suffering? What have I done wrong?" He longed to understand the reason for his pain, but found no answers. The pressure from his friends left him even more confused and bitter. As the days passed, Job's suffering became increasingly unbearable. He began to question not only the reason for his pain, but also the very justice of God. He wondered, "Why do the wicked prosper while I, who am righteous, am being punished?" He could no longer find meaning in his suffering. He asked, "Where is God's justice? Where is the mercy of a just God?" Job questioned the purpose of his own life and wished he had never been born. He pleaded with God for an explanation, a reason, something that would help him understand why he was enduring such immense pain. Despair consumed his heart, but even in the depths of his suffering, he never abandoned the hope that God might still hear his prayers. Amid his suffering, Job finally cries out to God, seeking a direct answer, and to his surprise, God responds. However, his response is not a clear explanation of Job's suffering. Instead, God poses a series of challenging questions. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Who set the boundaries of the sea? Who understands the paths of the snow or the wind? God reveals to Job the magnitude of his creation and the mystery of his infinite wisdom. He challenges Job to grasp the vastness of the cosmos and the complexity of the world. God's answer is clear. "You cannot understand everything, Job, but I am the creator of all, and as a human, you cannot fully comprehend the mysteries of suffering and justice." After this revelation, Job repents of his words and his lack of understanding. He acknowledges the greatness of God and his own human limitations. He submits to the divine plan, and in response, God restores him. Job regains his health, his prosperity, and even receives more children. God grants him a new life, more abundant than before. His story ends with the blessing of a life filled with peace and contentment. Job becomes a symbol of unwavering faith, someone who, even in the face of extreme suffering, remains steadfast in his trust in God. He learned that while human suffering remains a mystery, God is always present, guiding and caring for all. The story of Job is a profound testament to faith, perseverance, and trust in God, even when all circumstances seem to suggest otherwise. He endured terrible losses and lived through unbearable pain, but in the end, his faith was rewarded. Job teaches us that even in times of suffering, we should seek God's presence, not to understand all the mysteries of suffering, but to trust in his sovereignty and wisdom. This story is not just about pain, but about how true faith can endure even in the darkest moments, leading us to a deeper understanding of God. Job is a powerful example that, no matter how challenging life may be, genuine faith leads to victory, strengthening us to face any storm. If this message touched your heart and you want more reflections like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any content. Let's walk together in faith and perseverance, growing more each day. God bless.